Hey, look at that. Hangouts is working. We're live. It's episode 183 of the Hotbox. Matt Lee, of course, hotboxpodcast.com. Got a cool show for you guys today. We got Max Montrose, president of the Trichome Institute. So we're going to get nerdy, talk about some terpenes, their new interpening system, and just what they do in general. So hope y'all enjoy the show. Got the audio hooked up a little differently, so hopefully it sounds okay.
On the seventh day,
the terrors of tripping on pumps.
Be there! Scour the spaceways! Explore vast alien worlds! This tin right here contains the whole rigmarole.
I used to smoke about an ounce of hash every day.
Good.
And it made me go a little bonkers.
Baby, if I occupy his mind with more duties, I can control his space.
Hi, big fat doobies. Hi.
Oh, hi, what's up? Welcome. Today's Tuesday, July 26, 2016. This is episode 183 of the Hotbox. I'm Matt Lee. Of course, hotboxpodcast.com. You can check out all shows there. Hotboxpodcast.com/live. That's where you can watch these live shows, you know, when Hangouts is working and decides to play nicely with everything. Got a cool show for you guys today. We're going to interview Max Montrose, president of the Trichome Institute. If you guys didn't know, the Trichome Institute off of their website says they're a leader in cannabis education. All Trichome products are backed by world-leading experts in cannabis law, science, and medicine. Max Montrose, he's the cannabis industry's authoritative voice and a key educational advisor to the government, business, and public sectors for cannabis-related projects. Max specializes in cannabis safety, education, and awareness. He works with lawyers, doctors, and scientists in the cannabis industry to understand, discover, and educate all the people about the truth of the plant. So without any further ado, we'll give Max a call here and get him on the horn.
Hello.
Hey, Max, you're live on the Hotbox with Matt. How you doing?
Good, Matt. How are you?
I'm excellent. Good day in Washington. Sun's out. Can't complain. So I was mentioning that you're the president of the Trichome Institute, and the Trichome Institute does some online classes as well as in-person classes, bud tender certifications, stuff like that. How did you get started with the Trichome Institute?
Well, I actually started the Trichome Institute, and I did primarily out of the pure necessity that something like the Trichome Institute needed to exist in this industry and in this time period. For the sake of the type of cannabis education and information that exists in the industry and in the public within society. There's so much cannabis information that exists in our world that is just completely wrong across the board within medicine, science, business, genomics, horticulture, so many different things. And so I really believe that it was necessary to produce a cannabis education company where all of the information provided would be reviewed and approved by world-leading authorities within cannabis law, science, and medicine to confirm that the information is true, but also make sure that it's relevant and realistic. There's lots of cannabis education and information out there that comes from people in the professional world, medical or scientific, that don't really know anything about cannabis products or extraction methods or those types of things. And vice versa. There's so many people in the industry who know so much about the products and the business, but don't really understand some of the more complicated and technical medical and scientific aspects. So we're kind of a bridge between the two worlds.
That's cool. It's interesting to me how much like urban legend and internet lore is associated with cannabis. I mean, it's something that's been illegal for so long as a Schedule I substance, yet a substance that so many people take on the daily basis, illegal or legal. And like you always hear just these weird rumors, or this is where this strain came from, and this is how these cannabinoids are dealing in your receptors and everything. And as the normal consumer, it is hard. And I mean, you could search on the internet and get buried for days in reading all this info, and who knows what's true and what's not. So it's good that there is a company and a university of sorts like the Trichome Institute doing some sort of standardization.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the question that many people ask, which is a very good question, is, you know, if your information is so true and so accurate and relevant, where does it come from? And where it doesn't come from is the internet.
Right. Do you fill them in on the scientific process and everything?
Yeah, I mean, my approach is simple, which is don't take any information from stoner forums or cannabis schools that claim that they know what they're talking about without backing it up.
Right.
Why don't you get the information from the #1 head scientist in that division and area of science themselves? And, you know, when it comes to cannabis biology and botany and trichome botany, that would be Paul Mulberg. If it's cannabinoid pharmacokinetic pharmacology, that's Dr. Franjo Grottenherman. If it's terpenes, that's Ethan Russo. If it's cannabinoids, that's Dr. Raphael Meshulam. I mean, if it's, you know, cannabis genomics, it's Rob Clark. This is who, you know, I take my information from. It's the #1 most intelligent, most published, trusted author within that type of information within the industry that I extrapolate from. But what I do is I rewrite the information in a digestible format, because for most new people, novices, bud tenders, the work that we're working off of is sometimes Chinese to them.
Right.
And so we kind of just digest it and break it down in a more easy to understand format.
It's definitely hard to get people to read like an actual published research paper, let alone like getting past the abstract and all that. You definitely need people out there kind of intermediating these between the scientists and the end user, and like you said, the bud tenders and everyone working in the industry.
Right.
And it's so
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
beforehand you didn't really have that sort of access, because unless they were in another country that was more lenient with their cannabis laws, people weren't coming out and being like, look at all this amazing research I'm doing on cannabis. You know, they would get arrested, it seems like. But nowadays it is getting more and more open, and the state of everything is starting to relax a little bit depending on where you live. So we can have experts in these fields emerge and be like, hey, it's not science if you're not writing it down, and I've been writing it down this whole time. So come peer review this.
Well, I'm going to say a few things to what you just said. One is, you know, I don't have to explain, maybe I do have to explain, I hope I don't have to explain how stupid the United States of America is when it comes to what science is.
Right.
You know, we're the only country in the world that measures length or distance in a bizarre and complicated way that doesn't make sense. Same thing as measuring temperature.
Yeah.
Same thing as, I mean, we're just stupid when it comes to how we go about science. And the thing about science is supposed to be science globally. That's what science is supposed to be by definition, is whatever this country, you know, if they do an experiment and they come out to a consistent answer time and time again within a specific methodology, it's scientifically proven, unless it's from the viewpoint of the United States of America.
Right.
And so, you know, people in the US, doctors, senators, legislators will tell you, we have no science on medical marijuana, and there's no, you know, human trials. And it's like, well, that's a big heap of bullshit.
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What about the thousands of human trials from all of the science that's been proven to be true in all the countries who don't go about science stupid? So, when I said Ethan Russo, that's Europe. That's the UK. When I said Franjo Grottenherman, that's Germany. Raphael Meshulam, that's Israel. The rest of the world has plenty of science on how medical marijuana works and how medically beneficial it is. And we do have human trials and we do have evidence. We as Americans refuse to believe it, maybe because 50% of our country, political leaders think that global warming isn't even real.
Oh my goodness.
This country really does have its head shoved up its own ass.
I feel like they only recognize the science if it's in line with their beliefs, and beliefs are hard to change, or their profits.
Yeah, or their profitability.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you for letting me get that out.
Absolutely. No, we need more of that out there so people can start to wake up. Definitely. Where did all of our science go exactly? We have scientists. What are they doing? They're not doing this. I mean, some are now, but
well, it depends who writes their check. That's the difference between whether it's real science or fake science.
That's true. You can make the numbers say anything if your check is written properly enough. And that's definitely not real science and what we hold to be true as science and the scientific method and all that stuff. So it is interesting to see that applied to cannabis. And I mean, back in the day when I was a kid, like it was just you got whatever was there and you didn't know anything about it other than what your friend told you. We're studying this now and finding out there's terpenes and an entourage effect and all of this interesting offshoot niche sciences from this one plant. It's really amazing.
Agreed.
So you guys have something called interpening. Am I pronouncing that right?
Well, we pronounce it interpening.
Interpening, gotcha.
And so, what it is it is the supreme expertise and understanding of cannabis, similar to a wine sommelier, a beer cicerone, a cheesemonger, a coffee cupper, a tobaccoer, a chocolatier, a honeyer, people who have spent more than a decade fine-tuning their expertise within a craft that goes far and beyond most people's general understanding.
Really training their senses and everything to be able to pick apart different, as far as like wine people and even cannabis now.
Correct. And so, when I was coming up with the name, I did what a lot of people are doing now, which is trying to associate a word of cannabis with some word that is similar to sommelier. So you have cannabiers or ganja. I don't know. I've heard of
cannasseurs.
Cannasseurs. Yeah, exactly. All these different names.
Sure.
But years and years ago, when I finally decided to package what interpening was, I named it interpening because that's pretty much what it is. We're interpreting terpenes, which is going to allow us to gauge via smell the direction of psychoactivity the flower will bring us towards, regardless of the strain name. And this also works in conjunction with flower structure, because flower structure is dependent on cannabis variety type, which is dependent on geography and cannabis genomics combined. And so the class for level 1 and level 2 is a 3-hour lecture that really explains what cannabis is. Where does it come from? What is sativa? What is indica? What is ruderalis? Why do people believe sativas are sold in dispensaries, even though there's good evidence that maybe there's no such thing as sativa in the dispensaries?
That's interesting. I've thought that a little bit, and I've heard other scientists talk about it. And every time I'm in a rec shop doing reviews, people are always like, oh, don't give me this indica because I need this sativa, for whatever reason they've rationalized in their head. And I always just think to myself, I feel like it's more what your preconceived notions going into it are, and what your surroundings are, and what you're doing with it. I can get couch locked smoking any kind of cannabis if I just go sit on the couch. All I have to do is get up and, oh my goodness, guess what? I'm not couch locked anymore. But I always thought like the sativa and indica difference is more as far as like how it grows and everything. The effects, I don't know. Is there any truth to that, or?
I mean, yeah. So this is a very sticky conversation,
right?
And the reason why it's sticky is because to many people, including myself, cannabis is somewhat of a religion in the sense that it's something so dear to us, that's so close to us, that we're so involved in, that it's helped us so much on a daily basis for decades, that you get offended easily when someone raises an idea that goes against what you believe to be true. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, no, that's so interesting that you say that way,
Jesus
because
might not be real.
Yeah,
it's a little. Yeah, you get a little on guard quickly. Okay,
it's so, like, what did you just say about my Mary Jane? How dare you? I've been with this woman longer than any real women in my life. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I'm lecturing a group of people who have been growing cannabis for multiple decades, who, believe they know absolutely everything that you could ever know about cannabis, except they refuse continuing education and picking up newer books that come out because they already know everything. They don't need to, learn more. These are the types of people who get offended when I propose the idea that sativa might not exist in the way that we think it does. Does cannabis sativa exist genomically? Yes. Does cannabis sativa exist within, phenotype and chemotype within its cannabinoid and terpene constituents? Yeah, it's a species of cannabis, but it just so happens to be the genomic species that is hemp inherent and less marijuana inherent. It's NLH, narrow leaf hemp, not NLD, narrow leaf drug. And NLD, narrow leaf drug, is a plant that you believe is sativa because it has thin leaf fingers and it has long internodal spacing, and it is a very tall growing plant. And when you smoke it, you get high instead of stoned. But if you were to look at the DNA inside the plant and not the strain name,
right,
what you'll find is it's actually an indica species, subspecies indica, which is on one end of the spectrum compared to the variety types that chemically give you the couch lock effect, that are the more stone type of plants that have the fatter, wider leaves, the tighter internodal spacing, and the shorter plants that grow thicker, bigger buds, are indica species, subspecies afghanica. And then you actually do have a species of indica, which is a hemp variety, which is indica species, subspecies chinensis.
Oh, interesting.
And that's a variety type most people have never heard of.
Yeah, I have not.
That is just that is literally like a sliver of what we teach in class. I mean, so interpreting is a 3-hour lecture on what cannabis is, and I just gave you 2 minutes.
That's awesome, though. That kind of information people need to be exposed to, whether or not they choose to let their ego let go long enough to believe it or to test it themselves, or however they get past that block. People definitely need to hear it. So are the different effects then, you just transcribe that off to being different terpene and cannabinoid content between the species, or how does that work then?
Well, so how that works is variety type effect doesn't really involve cannabinoids.
Okay.
And what it is cannabis genomics is DNA, and the DNA is the building block of the plant. And then, human beings will take that plant and migrate to the other side of the planet with it. And now the environment is going to phenotypically shape the plant to be slightly different. And the combination of where the plant grows over a few 1,000-year period in conjunction with its DNA, the building block within it, will produce a spectrum of cannabinoids and terpenes that are specific to that variety type. And what it is it's the cannabinoids that are the engine in the motor, and it is the terpenes that steers the wheel.
Oh, interesting.
And so it is the types of terpenes that we can really gauge with our noses quite easily. What types of smells, and also where in your nose you smell these smells. There's a fun video of me training Julian Marley how to smell cannabis on our website, trichomeinstitute.com. If you go to the gallery section in the videos, you can see our little interpening smelling section. And I also use some of our tools. We have interactive weed wheels and charts and flip cards and guidebooks that explain all of this stuff and instruct you through it, that you also get in class as a part of the participation. We also train with 75 different samples of cannabis flower in class, and not only just good types of cannabis, but also cannabis that's infected with different species of molds and funguses, so that our interpreters in training can, smell the difference between Botrytis cinerea versus, a powdery mildew and a jar rot.
Oh, interesting.
And unflushed cannabis, old cannabis, nutrient burn, all sorts of anything you can think of. But yeah, it's the terpenes within the chemotype of the plant that's dictated by where the plant grows, how it grows, and its genetic structure that will gauge how it will make you feel. And there is a definite difference between the pharmacology. So, in terms of pharmacology and smell, we reference aromatherapy, which is a bona fide medical science and medicine that you sniff, that you inhale. And what happens when you smell lavender is chemically human beings become relaxed and sedated. And that's because the main isomer, the live hydrocarbon chain within lavender, linalool, is pharmacologically sedating.
Right.
And so when you smoke that molecule, the same thing happens to you. Versus something that's more of a citrus variety type, like a D-limonene, H-limonene, N-limonene, the difference between your mango haze, lemon diesel, grapefruit, whatever. Those citruses are chemically uplifting. They're chemically anti-cancerous, antifungal, and antidepressants. And so when you smoke them, you get high and not relaxed, not stoned. And so there is a difference between how variety types affect you and make you feel on a chemical level. And these are things that we can detect with our noses and our sight and our touch and our interpreting understanding, regardless of what strain names are called, because at the Trichome Institute, we don't really believe in strain names that much. We do when it's necessary, but the majority of the time it's unnecessary.
Well, and the majority of the time it's BS anyway, right? I mean,
well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
Bullshit is unnecessary.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is the effect different as like when you ingest these terpenes or you inhale these terpenes, as opposed to when you actually smoke them? You're applying heat to it, which is causing, I would imagine, some sort of change to the terpene itself. So in that change, does it still do the same thing? Like, does it still have the same effect, or is it different?
Yeah. So the thing is you have to. We're talking about science here. Okay. So 1 + 1 does equal 2. Every terpene has a different boiling point, but in general, the boiling.
Oh, did you mute your phone? I'm not hearing you anymore. You there, Max? Is your phone muted? I don't hear you whatsoever. Well, let's try and get Max back here.
You've reached Max Montrose's cell phone.
Let's see if he calls back here in a sec. Sorry about that. Oh, there
Hey
you go.
there, brother.
There you are. We lost you there for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Where did I leave off?
Let's see. We talked about how strains are BS, and then you were starting to explain how 1 + 1 is 2, so the terpenes are the same, I guess, when you ingest or smell or vaporize them.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that they, and by the way, there's an echo sometimes in the background. I hear myself. I don't know if your feed is picking that up or not.
Oh, no, I'm not hearing it on this end. Thank you, though.
But might just be my phone. So what I meant is, terpenes have boiling points. And most terpenes boiling points are generally over 320, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is less of a temperature than the flame that you're applying to your herb when you inhale it via smoke or vapor.
Okay.
So you're not destroying the terpenes necessarily, especially when they are trapped in the vacuum of you and whatever you're smoking them through. And so, no, I don't think you're breaking down the terpenes before you inhale them. I think that whatever you could, however you could smell them and have their pharmacological effect hit you via smell is going to be similar, if not the same, as if and when you smoke it.
I see. So it's the dose, and at the point of being able to smell them, there's enough parts per million, or however you want to measure it, to make that difference.
Right, and I've worked with a lot of different types of scientists on terpenes before, and I was talking with this one scientist who was doing some terpene experiments here in Colorado. And so he's got these 1-gallon jugs of 100% pure terpenes in their pure state. And these are essential oils that are very concentrated. And he was telling me some funny stories of like lifting off a jar of myrcene, linalool, and other terpenes that are sedatives, and simply just having the entire room just packed with pungency, almost like clam baking a room, but just with the smell of terpenes, and not really thinking to himself how serious the pharmacy of these smells are, and then finding himself crawling on the floor 15 minutes later, forgetting that he left the lid off the terpene jar.
Oh, no.
And he's like wasted in his laboratory because these terpenes are so strong in such a large volume that it like just smelling them affected him in that strong way, like couch lock, just smelling terpenes.
That's amazing. No cannabinoid content whatsoever, folks.
Correct.
Oh, was he making like terpene blends, or was he trying to extract with them, or can you say what the project was?
I can't really say because I'm under some contracts.
Yeah, fair enough.
Different things, but yeah, there's lots of terpene plants going around the industry in Colorado right now.
Same here in Washington. The key is, it seems like everyone's figured out like distillation. They've either figured out short path, or they're doing like the thin film wipe stuff. It seems what everyone's having an issue with is flavoring. You have one side of the fence that's doing like custom reintroduced terpene blends, and then you have the other side that's trying to actually extract the cannabis terpenes from the flower that the extract is going to be made out of. And I suppose there are definitely benefits and pros and cons to both of those. Do you have a preference on like when you ingest or what you work with or anything?
Well, ultimately, I would prefer that if I was going to ingest a cannabis product, that it be a product from cannabis.
Even though
Therefore,
molecularly the terpenes are the same regardless of where you get them and all that, you just feel more comfortable with them being extracted from cannabis itself.
well, here's the interesting thing. You said it's the same, but some of the terpenes are the same and others aren't. And so what you have to understand is, when you get a terpene test from the lab on, let's say, Golden Goat,
Sure.
your lab result is going to give you back the 10, 12 terpenes that they tested for. They're not going to give you the results back for the other 120 terpenes that are also in the smell that makes the smell Golden Goat.
I see. So these companies are just mimicking the main spikes in these terpene profiles and kind of just kicking to the side everything else because we either don't know what they are or just don't have them.
At the end of the day, it depends what your goal is with the product.
Right. Also,
and so, I'm in my hand right now, I'm holding a really awesome product from Mary's Medicinals, which is their new CBD distillate that's made for dabbing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you dab this CBD, it's almost crystal. What makes it not crystal is the terpenes that it's infused with. Because CBD is non-psychoactive, when you dab it, nothing should happen.
Right.
But when you dab this product, something does happen because of the terpenes infused in the distillate. Now, they don't need it to be cannabis-specific terpenes to gauge whether it's an indica feeling or, as we say, a sativa feeling.
Right.
They just know that there's specific terpenes out there that will make it either a sativa or an indica direction. And you can get very, very inexpensive organic plant-derived terpenes from other places and companies to infuse this with, and that's not bad. But what it's not is it's not cannabis terpenes.
Right.
And how much that matters is kind of up to you. I personally think there is a cool factor, a unique factor, and a boutique factor if you can get your hands on cannabis extracted terpenes, because as far as I know, and as far as I've seen, nobody can mimic any type of smell of cannabis. You name any strain or variety type you can come up with. I've never seen or smelled anything that a lab has produced in trying to mimic that smell that comes anywhere close, except for, extracting the smell itself from the plant itself.
Right. And that's, I always go with like your live resins or shatters that still have the original terpenes in over distillate that's been reflavored if the choice is there. Like something about my taste buds and my brain, they like the way that the shatter and the live resin taste. The other stuff kind of is like candy to me. Like it does taste fake, even if it is a strain inspired or whatever you call it. Like there is some sort of like, well, it's almost too much, My big problem is being able to get the terpenes out without changing them to where let's say your cold trap just smells disgusting. And I've smelled people's terpenes that have tried to distill them off, and it never smells good at all. And I just kind of assume that's something in the distillation process doing that, or it's all of them in one container. I'm not quite sure.
Well, let's see. In 2 days, I'm actually going to Evo Labs in Colorado, where they have their very own grow specifically to do whole terpene extractions from.
Oh, awesome.
And that they have a very unique whole cannabis plant terpene extraction platform that they would like to show me that I'm very interested in. But from what you were just saying, that whenever you've seen people's whole plant terpene extractions, they've kind of smelled gross. And whenever I've extracted terpenes from cannabis plants, the end result always does smell gross.
And I mean, is that the difference between distilling them and extracting them, or are those words kind of interchangeable there?
Well, distillation is a form of extraction.
Right,
It's
okay.
just extracting the purest of the pure of the extraction. It's kind of like
Right.
extracting an extract.
Yeah,
Is really what distillation is. But what matters more is how you extract it, because my very cheap, broke self could only afford an eBay version glass setup of at-home steam distillation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you pressurize cannabis with wet steam, what you're extracting a lot of is chlorophyll from inside the plant.
Right.
And so not only are you getting like the specific terpenes from the trichomes, you're getting a lot of the chlorophyll from the tissue of the plant body itself, and not just the fatty lipids of the trichomes.
Right.
And so it's within my experience that when you do steam distillation from whole flower, that it doesn't really work because the heat and the moisture and the pressure on the ganja itself.
Right.
Versus like a dry vacuum distillation or even a CO2 distillation, which is what I believe I may go see in a few days. I don't really know what their program is or if I'm allowed to say how they do what they do.
Right. Probably not, I'm guessing, but yeah, definitely really interesting stuff. It'll be cool to see what comes of it.
Yeah.
And I know, like in the decarb process, some of these distillation units, you can't really have it decarbing in the unit itself. So you're pretty much getting rid of any terpenes that may have been less volatile in that whole process when you're purging it. So I guess unless you have it in mind that, I want to retain as much of the natural terpenes as possible, like you got to have that in the front of your mind while you're doing the extractions. Otherwise, once they're gone,
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. And something interesting to that point that I think is important for people to know is, and people debate this with me all the time, okay? So if you want to debate me, we can go there. But,
I would love to moderate a debate like that between you and some of these other scientists.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I love getting into the debates. The thing is there's many edible companies that exist nowadays, and there's many of these edible companies that market and advertise their products being indica sativa dominant edibles.
Right.
And I'm just going to give you my debate from a scientific perspective. If you think about Golden Goat being a sativa and Bubba Kush being an indica, if you got them both lab tested and they both had 22% THC and 1% CBD and 0.4% CBN, and they were the exact same cannabinoid profile, why does one make you feel high and the other makes you feel stoned? Well, like I said, it's the terpenes, okay? Well, when you extract THC oil to make edibles with, it's such a violent process that the very volatile and gentle, fragile hydrocarbon chains that the terpenes are just get obliterated.
Right.
And when you smell CO2 oil, it's not like live resin because the terpenes really don't maintain.
And it all smells and tastes the same regardless of strain.
Well, that's the same thing with vape pens. Why vape pens don't make you high or stoned, they just get you kind of intoxicated in the middle.
Placebo effect.
And it's because it's cannabinoids, not terpenes, okay?
Right.
And so if you're making edibles with your CO2 oil or BHO oil or whatever, you've already obliterated the terpenes in the extraction method. Then you're going to decarb these cannabinoids by cooking them in whatever product you're baking them in, whether it's chocolate, cookies, or a lollipop, okay? You're going to heat this product up, and that's going to be another element that would burn off, terpenes even more.
Yep.
And so at the end of the day, you're eating delta-9 THC, which, converts into 11-hydroxy THC into your stomach, and it's molecularly a different chemical and drug than smoked flower.
More potent.
But what it isn't is it's not terpenes that you're eating. And so my argument is there's no such thing as a sativa or sativa or indica inclined edible. Oh, sorry.
No, that's interesting you say that. It makes perfect sense, unless they're reinfusing the final product with terpenes, right?
Right, and that would taste absolutely
awful.
Disgusting.
Yeah,
and it's how you can know is just go to your local grocery store, and there's a section. Well, in Colorado, probably Washington too, probably not in the conservative states. Sorry for you listeners out there. But in us liberal states in our grocery stores, we have essential extracts that are for whatever different purposes. But if you get like the lemon extract or the lavender extract, you know, if you take one or two of those drops and put it on your tongue, it hurts.
Oh, it's
and
gross.
It burns, and it tastes disgusting because it's concentrated.
Dose makes the poison.
Yeah, I've never seen or heard of anybody infusing terpenes in edibles.
Yeah, and it's I find a lot of these edible companies like to use distillate because it is a higher quality. It's a more potent, I guess. I wouldn't say quality, but the potency is more, and it's easier to homogenize in whatever you're making. But at that point, distillate has zero taste and smell. Like even CO2 oil and BHO oil, there is still little taste and smell from the less volatile terpenes, right? The ones that boil off at a higher point. But distillate has none. Like there is no terpenes if it's done right.
Correct.
People need to know that. Your edibles, it's all the same shit, you guys. Stop trying to be special and say that it's something it's not. I'm going to start saying mine are cannabis ruderalis edibles. So there. I have a quick question for you. I'm familiar with genotype and phenotype, but there was a third one you mentioned. I've never heard that before. Chemotype? Is that what? Chemotype. Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, and so chemo is just a chemical type.
Right.
And so that would be your terpene cannabinoid test.
Right.
And actually, if you don't mind, this kind of brings me into a new. Not nice, thanks, buddy. This brings me into another thing that I would like to mention if I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So currently in the industry, we have chemotype, genotype, and phenotype analysis. Although nobody does phenotype analysis, but it does exist. But neither chemotype, genotype, or phenotype equates to quality. And this is very important. The Trichome Institute is the first company in the world to develop the process, the algorithm, the calculator, and the laboratory to do cannabis quality certifications via a cannabis quality laboratory and process.
That's awesome.
What we're doing is we are certifying that certain flowers have a degree of quality that can be measured and calculated numerically, which means there is bud for sale in the state of Colorado today. Let me see. Here's some Silver Stem dispensary that got their Sour Kush got an 89.70, which is an A-. And so,
how does the grade scale break down? Like an A is what it says it is labeled as, or how is that?
Yeah, so I'm sure there's a million questions, and I'm about to publish a 3-page article on how this whole thing works.
Oh, perfect.
And how much bullshit cannabis cups are and strain reviewers, because when you are analyzing, the quality of a bud, you're judging it, right? Well, the question is who the hell are these judges?
Yep.
And who qualified them and certified them as knowledgeable in the first place?
Bro, my friend put on the thing and he said I could be a judge.
Exactly. Dude.
Yeah, man.
Exactly.
No, as a weed reviewer, I'll tell you it's all bullshit. Every single strain I've reviewed, what I've written about it as far as anything more than my personal experience, it's just bullshit.
Correct. And your personal experience is subjective.
Exactly.
And if you're judging something intoxicated, that's not a quality judgment.
Nope. And I always be sure to write, like, I've been smoking for 20 years, so I don't even get high at this point. So your results will definitely vary, especially if you're new to this.
Right. And what my lab doesn't look for is how high it gets us, because potency is not something that's measured by quality either.
Exactly.
And so, you know, here's an example. Let's say your cannabis cup uses only chemotyping, which is happening in Colorado right now. There's actually a really cool cannabis cup called the Grow Off, where all of the clones from all of the same genetics were given to these growers to grow.
Oh, nice.
So instead of you just growing your own strain,
Yeah.
all of the growers are growing the exact same genetics compared to each other.
That is so cool. And then
your
you'll see the differences between how each grower's climate and all that. Oh, that is so cool, man.
It's totally cool. It's totally cool. And I believe Trichome is going to be involved with this. I'm still figuring things out because I think we're going to do our quality lab testing. Our TAG program is what it's called, Trichome Assurance Grading. But essentially, you know, if you weren't using the TAG program, what they're doing is they're measuring, you know, the cannabinoids and the terpenes. But here's the truth. Just because you have the most THC and you have the most diverse terpene profile does not mean you have the best quality cannabis. What if the bud that has the highest THC and the most diverse terpenes is the worst flushed bud?
Mm-hmm.
And when you smoke it, it's going to hurt because it's full of salts and nutrients.
Yep.
What if it's got powdery mildew on it? What if it's got spider mite eggs, spider mites, fecal matter, exoskeletons, webs all over it?
All
Your
that gross.
chemotype test will not tell you those things.
Nope.
Okay? And so whatever the chemical constituent of a variety type is does not equate to quality. And whatever the genetics are doesn't equate to quality either. And so how we go about our process in a non-subjective matter is inter-rater reliability, which means we have 2 certified level 3 interpreters using the same standard operating procedure, using our calculator, which is digital, to assess 12 different points that include visual aspects with microscopic photography that are included in the report,
nice.
photos of the buds, an olfactory section, and a consumption section, not for how high it gets us, but for the degree of the flush and the burnability and the degree of any crackling on the bud for sprays and such. All of these things are measured numerically from an expert's perspective in a sober state, calculated and then compared to each other, and the answers come out the same. And when they don't come out the same, it's not accurate. And so when we do calculate things, we are consistent with accuracy via inter-rater reliability. Our experts compare their notes, and they are coming up with the same answers as each other within a degree of 5 points out of 100. And it's really cool. So what that means is you could stick me in a room and one of my other level 3 interpreters in a different room, break off 2 nugs from the same branch, and have us calculate what the quality of that nug is and give you a number at the end of, you know, a 15-minute analysis, and our numbers match, even though we're not doing it together.
That is so cool. I want to be a level 3 interpreter. I also want you guys to come up with something like that we can start as cannabis reviewers, start actually using, like on our own. That would be excellent if we could standardize all that.
Well, maybe you should be one of the first licensed tag labs in Washington.
Ooh, I like that.
Well, you should call us after the interview because we are expanding.
That's excellent. Good to know, definitely. But that sounds really interesting. And it's not like I've been doing this a while, and people, it's just like in the tech industry, like people get trapped inside their own filter bubbles and echo chambers, and they kind of just pump each other up with the same bullshit. And as soon as someone else comes along with something that's different, they're like automatically closed down to it. Just like you said earlier, the whole belief thing. So it's really a breath of fresh air to hear someone else talk about other things. It is really cool. Tag.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
You guys are doing cool work out there, definitely.
Well, yeah, and just to kind of finish up on the tag thing, not necessarily the process, but like, what's the point? The point is we're having quality certified bud in the marketplace, which is business diversification that kind of separates the good businesses from the bad. And it encourages other businesses to produce high quality products that is well flushed and isn't sprayed, so that we're encouraging the industry to produce better quality products for the sake of consumer safety, health, and pleasure.
Yeah, it raises the bar, definitely.
It's definitely raising the bar, but every business in this industry grows the best weed, right? So how do you actually prove that you really do? And this third-party method helps you with that, but it also helps wholesale growers and producers price pounds fairly.
I was just going to say that.
Wholesale product should be based on quality from a third party and not whatever the grower thinks it's worth.
Well, up
That's
here, it's all THC based. People just buy whatever has the highest number because that's something easy to point to on a label when people come in and say, what's your best weed? Or like, oh, well, this is 32%. It's like, well, that's bullshit, first of all. Second of all, that's not your best weed. But they don't know. And if you could offer this in a way to like the rec stores that are having to deal with finding the best weed to stock their shelves with, I think that would be epic.
Well, that's what this process is for, and we need help with it all around the country. So if anybody is like you, a quality human being who's not afraid to learn new things and who's interested in learning more about this process and potentially being a licensed tag lab in your area, should definitely drop us a line at trichomeinstitute.com. We're also doing this tag program for cannabis cups so that we can finally make cannabis cups a real thing.
Yes.
But we also developed the wine spectating score for the cannabis industry. And what we can do is we can actually drive traffic to dispensaries who do have high quality product by implementing what these scores are based on the flower into apps like Leafly and Weed Maps. So instead of seeing where every dispensary is, we can point out where the high quality bud is live. And so we're publishing our scores in magazines, apps, many other things.
That is too cool. I can't wait for the day where you can pop on Leafly or Weed Maps or something and see like where the good weed's at, not just where the close weed is at. That's really cool.
Correct.
And especially for the medical. Like that was one thing that always confused me when I moved to Washington from Montana, is that the rec side is held to a much higher, more regulated standard than the medical side. And it's like, if the medical side is serving actual patients, shouldn't that be a higher standard? Like give the rec side the moldy buds and save the good shit for the patients. It just seemed backwards to me. And this seems like something that can definitely help fix all that.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't get me started on the whole medical thing because,
No, not going to start it. I'll just tell you when medical ended here, I got laid off from my lab job. So don't get me started either.
I'm gonna make a few statements that I'm not going to answer because we don't have time, but sure. I will say that medical marijuana is real and true in a very serious way. But the way that my state, Colorado, goes about it, medical marijuana is bullshit, really. We have 21-year-olds who are unlicensed, untrained, people who have never taken a class in cannabinoid pharmacology, let alone human health, right, who are consulting cancer patients like they're a pharmacist, even though they can't barely open their eyes.
Yep.
Some of them, not all of them. There's required lab testing for rec, but not medical in Colorado, really. And at the end of the day, there's no difference between the products on this side of the store or that side of the store. The only difference is the price and the taxes.
The tax, yep.
Yeah, and do not be surprised when all forms of medical cannabis that you know in a dispensary form and setting to be federally illegal in all 50 states in just a few years.
Are you speaking to a rescheduling and that will kind of put that into the pharmaceutical company's hands, or just an overall medical just getting rid of?
Well, it's already in the pharmaceutical company's hands. I mean, we've been lied to, for almost 100 years now.
Yep.
The idea that cannabis is a Schedule 1 because it provides no medical benefit. Like, oh yeah, go look at the molecular structure of dronabinol, Marinol. What is that? Oh, it's THC.
How weird.
What does THC do? Oh, it helps medical patients, this, and that. So what is dronabinol and Marinol scheduled as? It's a Schedule 3. 1993, it was moved from a 2 to a 3, and our federal government has owned the medical benefits and extraction methods and medical applicability of CBD and THC cannabinoids since February 2nd, 2001, when they patented the medical aspects of cannabis, which they already own. And no, there's no way in hell the FDA, will say that an edible is medicine because 11-hydroxy is too erratic. You're not going to say anything that you smoke is medicine because
you're smoking.
Smoking is dangerous. And anything that's from a flower is too erratic within its polypharmacy, within its cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. So anything that they're going to deem as medicine is going to be, controlled and specific at a molecular structure in a pill form that they're going to produce themselves. And so just like alcohol was prohibited, then it was medicalized. You had to go to the doctor and get a prescription for whiskey. I collect them from the 1930s. And then once the government experimented with society on what it would look like for people purchasing these substances, taxing them, found out that they could control it, they pulled it out of medicine and just produced it as adult use, retail. And that's the same thing cannabis is going to do. I'm confident medical marijuana will be illegal very soon.
That's crazy. It's
in the way that we know it to be now. Yeah.
I read a book called The Poisoner's Handbook, and this Miss Plum writes about how the scientists on each side of prohibition, some were poisoning the alcohol, and then the chemists on the bootlegger side would try to unpoison the alcohol, and they kept kind of going back and forth. In the meantime, all of these people that just want to get their drink on are getting sick and dying and going blind and all that. Like it is a very different prohibition, but in a lot of the ways it is very similar. It's very eerie.
There's a big plan out there, buddy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's been in the planning and in the works for decades. And when you get to the level of the industry that I'm at, where you're just knee deep in the research and the law and the legislation and the chemistry and the history and the who, what, where, why, and how of everything cannabis related, you really start to get the crystal ball in your hands and the ability to see the future, because you can just kind of start to put the puzzle pieces together and take a step back and look at the bigger picture as a whole. And that's one reason why Trichome Institute is so successful. From an education company perspective, the interpreting cannabis, expert perspective, tagging perspective, how we consult other businesses on what they do and how they go about what they do. In general, we really understand what's happening from a cannabis perspective and from an industry perspective.
That's awesome. We need more companies like that aren't just in it to make their quick buck in the bubble and exit. It's really, really cool to see. Well, I won't take up any more of your time, Max. It was awesome having you. I love being able to chat with people like you in this industry doing that stuff every day. It's so interesting. Thank you, man.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, brother. And yeah, definitely hit me up at the end of the show and we'll keep the conversation moving.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you, Max. Max Montrose, president, founder of the Trichome Institute. Really cool stuff. If you guys have any questions, anything like that, definitely email info@hotboxpodcast.com, and I can either answer myself or get them to the people that know the stuff that you want to know. Definitely check out all of my bullshit weed reviews on stuffstonerslike.com. At least enjoy the pictures. Those are real. So. And then, yeah, got some stuff coming out. You noticed the last episode 182, was just a bunch of interviews. I went to Montana, came back. On my way back, I spoke with Taylon Lang, patient advocate up there in Missoula. And then, yeah, we had the Imperious Expo up in Tacoma. So it was basically just a like CanaCon or the Tacoma Classic, just a bunch of booths, exhibitors, all peddling their cannabis wares and information. So those are just some of the audio that was actually intelligible. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy all that stuff. And yeah, hotboxpodcast.com. Definitely check out what Max Montrose is doing and his team over at the Trichome Institute, trichomeinstitute.com. That's the site. And yeah, we'll catch you guys next time. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that crap, all that bullshit. And we'll see you later. Peace.